We tend to avoid information that is discomforting or unsettling, similar to an ostrich burying its head in the sand. This tendency to distance ourselves from information that may disrupt our content or challenge our desired beliefs is called the ostrich effect, also known as deliberate ignorance or information aversion. It describes our preference for blissful ignorance over distressing enlightenment. We may assume that a rational approach to decision making is to absorb as much information as possible to form a well-rounded views and make informed decisions. However, our emotional selves often balk at the prospect of receiving information that could provoke anxiety, fear, or discomfort. It's as if we build a cognitive fortress to shield ourselves from unsettling revelations, fortifying our mental landscape with the bricks of denial and avoidance. In my earlier video, I introduced information bias, which means that we tend to seek excessive information when it does not influence decisions. It is an overzealous pursuit of information, often to the point of indulging in irrelevant data for decision making. Sometimes information can have a negative impact, making decision making worse. When it comes to hiring, not knowing the gender of an applicant can actually lead to better decisions by reducing gender bias. In some cases, being intentionally unaware of certain details can result in more favorable outcomes. The ostrich effect stands on the opposite end of that spectrum. Here, we actively shun information or unpleasant but constructive feedback, choosing ignorance over knowledge, especially when the knowledge in question could be challenging. You'd think with all that life-saving benefits of early medical screenings, people would be lining up for them, right? Fear is pulling the strings here. The mere thought of a dreaded diagnosis has many people burying their heads in the sand. Who needs to know anyway? We are all going to kick the bucket someday. The ostrich effect makes people dodge information that could trigger negative emotions, and no news is good news. Our tendency to align our internal perceptions of reality and the world's external reality often leads us down the path of selective information gathering and interpretation. This deliberate filtering of information enables us to fortify the reality within our minds, seeking affirmation while simultaneously pushing away or discrediting information that just threatens our views. This behavior is very common, including labeling disagreeing information as fake news, misinformation, or conspiracies. Those terms become catchphrases used to dismiss or deride information that conflicts with our beliefs, values, or preferences. Sometimes we label something as fake news or misinformation after a careful analysis of the facts, or simply from an instinctive rejection of information that contradicts our pre-existing beliefs. At other times, accusing something of being fake news or misinformation is a tactical move. By undermining the credibility of a news source or piece of information that's incoherent with our views or objectives, we attempt to diminish its impact or sway public opinions. This is often seen in political arenas, where strategic labeling of fake news or information is used to control narratives or to fend off criticism. The ostrich effect works together with the confirmation bias, which is a mental shortcut that pushes us to favor information that aligns with our existing beliefs and to ignore or disparage information that contradicts them. Whether conscious or non-conscious, those mental shortcuts construct a reality that feels coherent and comfortable, even if it is at the expense of objective truth. Social media further exacerbates this problem. Many social media algorithms reinforce the ostrich effect and confirmation bias by showing us content that aligns with our views, thereby creating echo chambers where we lose opportunities to be exposed to different opinions and perspectives, and we fail to practice our critical thinking skills. Information bias can elicit a broad spectrum of emotions, ranging from joy and excitement to anxiety and dread. The negativity bias makes us allocate more cognitive resources to negative information, possibly as a survival mechanism. Negative information often requires urgent action or reflects potential threats, so prioritizing it may have survival advantages. However, we sometimes choose to actively avoid information that may provoke negative emotions. That's the ostrich effect. Whether it's a genetic predisposition to a disease, financial difficulties, or unpleasant feedback, avoiding this information can provide a temporary relief from anxiety or fear. Do you want to undergo genetic testing and know your genetic predictions for diseases? What's your choice? Yes or no? Most people, like James Watson, the co-discoverer of DNA's structure, chose not to know their genetic predispositions. This decision, although deeply personal, sheds light on universal human tendency to avoid distressing information. Knowing you carry a gene for a particular disease can lead to constant worry and anticipation of symptoms. This dread can overshadow daily life, causing stress and anxiety. On the other hand, not knowing allows for a normality, even if it means living in ignorance. The avoidance of potentially harmful information can be further explained by regret theory, which argues that our inclination to avoid potential regret arises from learning something we'd prefer not to know. This mental calculation weighs the potential benefits of knowledge against the potential emotional costs. The relationship between information and our emotional response is far more complicated than we originally thought. Imagine you are standing in the supermarket, gazing at a box of cookies. A glance at the sugar content might send shockwaves to your health-conscious mind. But if you have a sweet tooth, you may deliberately ignore that information. You may decide you don't want to know, allowing yourself the simple pleasure of indulgence. Let's look at the policy of mandatory disclosure of calorie on food products. It was crafted with good intentions, aiming to lead to healthier choices. But what if people consciously avoid that information? If a juicy burger's caloric content is going to ruin the enjoyment, some people may choose blissful ignorance. What was meant to guide becomes an overlooked detail. Election season brings its own share of the ostrich effect. Your heart may be set on one candidate, and you hear whispers of damaging information that could sway your vote. What would you do? Some people choose to shove that information aside, out of sight, out of mind. We've all heard the saying, follow your heart. But what if your heart's desire conflicts with rational thinking? Maybe it's a spontaneous trip or a bold career change or even love at first sight. You may find yourself wrestling with a tug of war between heart and mind, where holding back information is a strategic maneuver to let your heart win the day. Whether it's avoiding the latest health craze restrictive guidelines or turning a blind eye to a loved one's flaws, deliberate ignorance can sometimes lead to contentment and better outcomes. It's not always about burying your head in the sand, but about navigating the maze of life with wisdom. When does deliberate ignorance become harmful or irresponsible? It's a fine line that each of us must navigate. As we've learned today, embracing the fact that information is not always the supreme ruler that can sometimes lead to better decisions. Recognizing when to seek information and when to let your heart lead can be a liberating and personalized way to approach life's many decisions. Our choices to seek, ignore, or even suppress information are not just based on logic and reason. They are deeply intertwined with our desires, fears, ethics, and emotions. Start observing your decision-making process and those of others around you. See if you can spot instances of the ostrich effect. Please feel free to share your comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.